part of the Resilient Pastor Initiative, the Barna research team has found that about 40% of pastors felt like they were underprepared for handling conflict. Similarly, about 37% as of 2022 felt like they could have been better prepared for training and delegating those on their team. Now, before I give you one major priority that I would suggest that you make in this coming year and 5 ways that you can execute it, I want to encourage you and remind you that you are not alone and that you do not have to take next steps on your own. So, the ability to have conflict and the ability to train and delegate well are 2 major responsibilities that are key for any leader, especially in the church context. And so when we leave these things unchecked, we do not grow in these areas, that's going to leave you feeling exhausted and you're going to struggle to thrive in your call. Secondly, it's going to create a facade of what a healthy team is, and we're going to settle instead of pushing and allowing our teams to reach their full potential. So what I'm about to suggest to you, I'm sure you already know, and you would probably agree with me, but hear me out and make your team building a priority this year, because teamwork is critical to your mission. I know it feels like another job description on top of everything else that you do, preaching, teaching, weddings, funerals, all of that. And I know that there's also a budget to consider. But hear me out. Your teamwork is mission critical. How your team operates, not just the things that they do, but how your team operates is mission critical. And I know as teams, we enjoy strategizing what we're going to do and how we're going to achieve our mission. But team development is kind of like strategizing how you're going to work as a team. The reason it's important is because your team, however your team operates, that's going to set the tone and the culture for your church. It's not more important than your mission, but I would suggest that your mission will see far less fruit without a healthy team, without ongoing team development. I might even go as far as to say that your team's health and team development is sort of the integrity behind what it is that you're building, behind the mission. You see, Jesus, after washing the disciples' feet, gave a new command, and he says this: love one another. And this would be the identifying mark that these disciples belong to the way of Jesus. See, teamwork is this ability to cohesively work together, bringing the sum of all your team's parts as a team in order to move in the same direction. You see, it's less about competence than it is about prioritizing the relationships that are built on trust and prioritizing each other and the mission above personal agendas. You see, there are 4 things a lack of teamwork is going to do. And let me ask you and see if any of these resonate. A is going to create this feeling of silos, where there's a very individualistic ministry orientation to how your team operates. Secondly, these silos is going to be breeding ground for politics and unhealthy conflict. And that unhealthy conflict, that politics, is going to heighten this feeling of isolation. And this isolation is going to trigger this self-preservation, which is going to trump vision and mission. And I get it. Team development can be trendy. It's like a fad. Which resource do we use? Which book do we rely on? And we put a lot of weight even on these resources to be the be-all, end-all, the thing that's going to take our team to the next level. And I think that's unnecessary weight because, again, team development is very much like personal growth, very much like an athlete training. It's about putting in the reps more than it is about finding the right thing to do, the right resource to use. And yes, there's a lot of good resources, some that I definitely would recommend, especially in regards to conflict and training and delegating. But I don't think it so much matters what resource that you use. I think it's about starting the process of intentionally developing your team. because it requires regular reps. So what could you do? What are some things that you can build into your rhythm every week, every year? First is there's lots of podcasts. I know budget can be an issue. I know that is team development is often something that gets the first cut and maybe the lowest line, maybe not. But I would encourage you, if that is an issue, there's lots of plenty of podcasts. Likely you're thinking of one even right now as I'm talking, and you know that there's a podcast that you could probably take your team with. And lots of these podcasts will provide free resources simply for that purpose, or solely for that purpose of your team using it. Second, there's lots of books similar to the podcast. There's lots of books that you can do as a book study and work through your team. Third is hiring an outside facilitator, consultant, or a coach. Yes, this requires a budget, but oftentimes those coaches like myself will provide a discount for churches. Lots of coaches will want to work with you because they want to see you succeed. But it is important, and I don't want to negate the value of putting money and investing in that, because I could talk lots on that and you could talk lots on that, but there is a value in placing money into that because you have buy-in. And so it's important for that. And what this also does is hiring an outside facilitator is it takes the weight and the work off of you as the leader or someone on your team that maybe you're delegating this to. And you can then participate alongside your team. And secondly, oftentimes when a leader takes this on, it becomes secondary because we've already described that it feels like a second job. There's a lot of work that needs to go into it. And so you do it when you have time. And so when you approach it that way, it doesn't get the priority and the attention and time and energy that it needs. Lastly, second last is start somewhere with a budget for team development. Put it in next year's budget. Find a way to put it in this year's budget and see where you can fit that in if you haven't already, and then schedule it. Make sure it gets in the calendar, it's communicated to your team, because the value of putting it in there is going to show the value to your team. Hey, we are taking this seriously, and follow through on whatever it is that you have committed to. Follow through. Take the little steps, because again, this team development is not for the short game. It is a long game play. Did you catch that? It is a long game play. So don't put so much pressure on one particular resource that you're using, but remember, it's consistently and faithfully building in the time and the effort to build your team, because your mission matters. It's big and it's important, and the mission of your church requires teamwork. It requires your team, and your team requires your initiative. My name is Michael Dewick, part of Michael Dewick Coaching. I would love to be able to serve you, and I have a resource that I would recommend. It's not a be-all, end-all resource, but a great starting resource is the 6 Types of Working Genius.